Let's use an example of methods using C#. First, I'm going to create a console application using Visual Studio. And so it's File, New Project, and then I give the name of the project. In this case, I gave this console application the name methods underscore practice. It happened to give me a default class name of program. If I want to, I can right click on that, highlight it, right click on that, and rename it, and change the name to something. And then it goes through and updates all the instances of where it has where it's renaming that in the program. So what we want to notice is that in this example we're breaking our code up into different units, and in that case let's take a look at the first one. The first one is that everything is enclosed inside of the namespace. Inside of the namespace we have a class. Now you can have more than one class inside of this namespace, and we will at one point. But for now we've just got one class inside of this namespace. Inside of this one class we happen to have one method, and this method happens to be the main method. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we're going to break our code into different units. You don't want to have a lot of code inside of one method. So what you do is you break it into different methods, and each method normally does just one thing. So let's see how to make a method. The first thing you need to know is that when we create a method, we need to create it outside of our main method, but still inside of the class. So I'm going to put it right here, and I'm going to use some keywords which I'm not going to explain right away, but private, static, void, and then I'm going to give my method some name, and this one is just going to display information. Now I'm going to put parentheses on the end of that, and that shows me it's a method. I am not going to put a semicolon right here because I need to have the body of my method, which is where my code is going to be. For right now, what we're going to do is that we are just going to say hello from the display method. Okay, and that will do it for our first method that we create. So I created this first method, cleared a little room here. So I created my first method, make that a little bit bigger, and in my first method it's not going to return any value. Now these methods don't know that there's any other method out there. The main method right now, if I run this, debug, start debugging, it's only going to say, in this case, it says write a line to the console, and inside of these double quotes the literal string, whatever's between these double quotes, and that's what it did. It says hello world. So that's the only thing it does. It has no idea that this other method is out there. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to first stop this from debugging. what I'm going to do is that I'm going to call that method, and I'm going to do that. The only thing I need to do, get rid of this. The only thing I need to do is to give the name of that method, and there it is, parentheses. And I'm not sending any information to that method. I'm not sending any information to this method. I'm just saying, jump down here to this method, execute the code, and then return back up here and return back to the main method. So it'll do that. It will say hello world. It will call this method, which means it finds out where this method is at, whether it's above this method or below the method or wherever it's at in the program. It will find this method and then execute that code. In this case, it's only going to output to the console window, whatever it is between these double quotes. And then it will jump back up here to the main method and it will end. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. Debug, start debugging. And there it did just that. Okay. So let's look at a different example. Let's say that we want to pass a value to this method. Okay. I don't really need that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. But if I say a string data type, name, and assign a value to that. Okay, so I created a variable I call name. It's got a red squiggly line that says you've created this variable, but you're not using it anywhere. So let me go ahead and use this. I'm going to change this method. I'm going to change this method. I'm going to change it so that I will send my name to this method. Now it gives me a red squiggly line because this call does not match what this says. Right here it says display, but in between these parentheses it's not accepting. This is where the information is passed to this method, and there's nothing in here to say accept some information from outside. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say accept a string and call it my name. Okay, so from this main method, and then let's go ahead and actually use it down here. It says from my method, let's have it say, and then the placeholder, comma, my name. There it is. Okay. So in this case, I've changed this method around to where it's going to create a variable, assign a value to it, and then it's going to call this method, but it's going to send information to it via what we'll call a parameter. So it's sending information from here, from this method, way over to this method here. So it's sending it to this method, and it's sending it in these within these parentheses, and it's saying that get ready to accept a string, and when it comes in, give it the variable name my name. So in this next line, what we do is that we print out my name is, and it should pick up that variable, that value sent from the main method. Okay, let's send more than one data value, one parameter. So let's send an integer data type, and we'll call it age, and we'll assign a value to it. And now what we're going to do is that we're going to send the name and the age. And I'm going to go down here, and so I get a red squiggly line in here, and it says, let's see what it says, shows you the method, and it says it's not overloaded, which means we have to make this the same here, what we're passing and receiving have to be the same thing. Now, again, there's ways to get around this, but for now we're going to go ahead and do it this way, to where, okay, we're going to be sending a name, and we're going to be sending an integer data type, and we're going to call it my age. Okay, so it can accept those. And now I'm going to change my output statement and say my name is and age is, and then my curly braces and so then I can output those. Oops, what I say, my age. Okay. So so we created two data types and two pieces of information. I'm going to put this on one line. And then we sent both of these values to this method, and we sent the name, and we said expect a string when it comes in, call this variable my name. I could use the same name here or there, but just to show you that we can have different names too. And then also expect an integer value, and when that comes in, call that my age. Now when I go to my console write line, then I can say go ahead and display my name is, and replace that with whatever value is stored in there, and then whatever integer value is stored in age. Okay, so it does that. Now can I mix these around? Let me put age first and put name second and see if that will work. And when I type that, the compiler says no way. It says argument 1 cannot be converted into a string. Okay, so this is an integer data type, and here I'm saying the first thing that you're going to get in is a string. So I tried to send the integer first and then the string, and down here it's got string first and then the integer, and it won't let me do that. So I'll switch those back around. Okay. Okay. One more thing I want to show you is that about scope. Let's say that inside of this method called display, I create a variable integer data type, and I'll call it num, and I'll assign a value to it. Okay, so no problem. And now I want to use num, and I want to take num, and I want to add age onto it. So I'm going to say num plus age, and it says no, there's a my age, but if I say no, I want to use age because it was created up here. So I want to use that down here, and it says no, inside of this method the only variable that you have is a variable which is called my age. So the scope of age that is here, this scope this age variable can only be seen from within this method. If I create a variable here, then num can only be seen from within this method. So the scope in this case lies just with this method. The scope for this variable lies just with this method. This method can't see it, any other methods can't see it. So the scope on that is just for that method. Okay, now one last change for this. Let's make it so that private means that it can only be seen within this class. So I'll go over these, but they go over these in more detail when we look at classes and objects. But static just means that you can't do something called create an object and then refer to this. But again, that's something for later. But something we do need to know is that void means that it's not returning any value back up to display. You notice that when display runs, that it's not taking anything back from this method. The pointer moves back up here, but that's about it. So nothing is being returned from this method. So how about if we return an integer from here, from this method? So let's do that. So I change this, so, and now it's got a red squiggly line on there, and it says in essence there is no return value. In other words, it's not returning anyway. So the way that I do that is that I need to put the keyword return in here and then actually return something. So I'm going to return my age plus 10. So that's what I'm going to return. So that's what that means, is it says what type of variable, what type of value are you going to be returning. In this case I said an integer. So here I say return this integer plus 10. So when it comes back up here, I actually want to display that information. So here's what I want to do, is that let's create another variable and make it an integer data type, and let's call it return value, and here's what I'm going to say is that return value, and then put the assignment statement on there. So now when this runs, here's what it's going to do. It's going to declare all these and put an initial value of age and my name on there, and then it's going to call this method. But this time when it goes down here, it's going to display this console write line, and then it's going to return a value. So it's going to jump back up here, and this value, which is my age plus 10, is going to be stored in return value. And let's display that by creating a console write line, and we'll say that the return value equals, and then my placeholder, and then return value. Okay. So now when it returns, it will have a console write line and show you what this return value is. And it will be the age plus 10 that will be returned here. And that's what will show up. Okay, so that's all for methods. Uh, just a quick note that I want to make sure that I've saved all. Um, and now that I've saved all, now I can move that file. Let me go track that down with Explorer. And it was saved in my projects, and I called it methods practice. So now that I've got that folder, I can copy this to my flash drive or some other place, and so I've got that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, send that to a compressed zip folder, or use a compression program, whatever I've got, and then rename it to my name, methods practice. So I've got that zip folder, and then I've got a file which I can upload. Okay, that will do it.